What kind of need do you see for the gap that Cashvisory is filling, and what is the pressing need that we are solving, and how much do you relate to it personally?
Well, I think I I relate to this problem statement, and I think when you'd reached out on LinkedIn, when
Yes.
the problem statement resonated with me because I was going through the same trouble. I remember when I had made some money at Innovator, I actually put that money into someone sold me an LIC bond and some other insurance bond. And I think those are some of the worst investments that I made.
Yeah.
And when you have very little financial knowledge, you are duped by people, and I was duped by a friend of mine. And like the one of the major reason why most people are poor is because of the financial choices you make. And I don't think it's just me. Even my parents, they never invested. Like when they had money, they used to keep it in their locker at their home.
That physical locker at home.
Locker at home.
Okay.
Or they would put it in a savings account because they, if that money disappears, that is a more of a fear for them. And disappears doesn't mean that the investment will get wiped out. It is just that if the money is not there accessible to them, that is a mental fear that they had, and they never actually invested that money anywhere. And when I looked at the cost of not making that investment, I feel that alone made moved them from what would have been a upper middle class to a lower middle class. That makes a lot of difference, right? I mean, money not invested in 20 years will become 1/8 of what it is of its actual value, and because there is inflation. And so if you had X amount of money in 2000, by the time it is 2020, your money's worth will be 1/8 of that.
Yeah.
Which means that that most, and this is something that happens at most households in India, right? Like people who are smart enough to deploy their money are able to get to their dreams very, very comfortably, very easily. But people who don't, and I've seen that side of the journey, I feel that they struggle to actually achieve their dreams. It's not that we had any issue in our regular day-to-day stuff, but then some dreams, some aspirations that our parents had were unfulfilled, partly because of the way that they were managing their money.
Yeah.
Simple things, like for example, they wanted a home, and they could not afford to buy a home because they were not managing their money well.
Yeah.
That money, if they had invested even in a very safe financial instrument, let's say if they had invested in even a liquid fund, for example, it would have been enough for them to buy a home today. But they never did. And they just kept their money either in the locker or in a savings bank account, and they just could not buy their home. Finally, now they have, but now I help them. But basically, those financial decisions make a huge impact into whether or not you're able to get to your aspiration.
Yeah.
And these things we take for granted, but in it compounds.
Yeah. I think that's something that people are not able to project, and usually you will see that a lot of people who save a lot of money, they feel they are doing it right, so they can continue to save, and they feel that because the quantum of the savings is growing, they're getting closer to their goal. And we always tell people that if you're just saving, then you are getting farther and farther away from your goal, and you just don't know it. It's only after 20 years you'll realize that you're not even halfway there. Right? So it's really, the right sort of financial decisions right from day one that people need to have. And a lot of it is, I think, of course, lack of knowledge, lack of guidance, which is why we brought Cashvisory into the picture. And I figured out that the reason our problem statement actually struck a chord is something that you were facing yourself, and then you got started with your investment. So would you like to share your experience of getting started? What are the things you had to learn? And because one interesting thing I just want to point out, I personally felt was that as an entrepreneur, I would put you in a box of a risk taker. Right? I would always imagine that people who take risks in business and life, do bungee jumping, these people can take all kinds of risks, but that's totally not true. Taking risks in investments is, or a certain type of risk appetite with your money is very, very different from taking risk in your career or in life or anything else. So where does, how does that happen within you? Like, how do you feel about investments or taking risks with money, and what are the things that you needed to learn before you got started?
Okay. Yeah. Well, I would start by answering this part of the question that yes, entrepreneurship is a risky deal, and I think people call it a lottery because at the end of it, it can be either a 1 or a 0. And like, case in point, Innovator became a unicorn, while Nikki shut down, and that is a typical startup life.
Yeah.
And I think because you are taking such a concentrated risk in this part of your life, you don't want to take the same risk across every part of your life, right? So like the biggest fear that I had was me running out of personal funds, and I think part of the reason I made some of the, for example, I had a good chunk of money lying in my bank account, and I just wanted it to be in my bank account in my Nikki days, just because I wanted mental peace. I did not want to invest it anywhere. I did not, and I think I understand the psyche that my parents also had. My dad also had. He was also an entrepreneur, and this applies very strongly that if you are taking a huge risk where it's a 0 to 1, you would usually be very, very wary in your personal finances.
Yeah.
And you don't want to take that risk, and which is part of the reason I did not take that risk. And I think that was completely flipped in my Swiggy days. I was making good amount of money on a month-on-month basis, and it just increased my risk appetite.
Yeah.
And I think because of that cushion that I had, I was able to plan what are the 10 aspirations that I would have, and allocate finances to it, right? And again, it is so weird that one of the most important tool of today's day and age is requires mathematical skills to be able to maneuver, because if like I know for my parents it's very difficult to understand compounding and to be able to understand the impact of inflation on their wealth, right? But this is the harsh reality that that most people don't understand the impact of compounding. They don't understand this mathematical jargon, and as a result they are poorer, or they become poorer. Like I've seen that in my parent journey, and I think that is one of the reason. But anyway, I digress. One of the reason why I never bothered to invest is because I just wanted some mental peace while I'm taking this concentrated risk in my life. And but yeah, I mean, if I so actually coming back to the discussion, I mean, I think the biggest thing that resonated with me in that journey when we reached out was that the ability to plan your finances better, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize, but through that journey of about 3 to 6 months, I became sound enough to be able to give that same advice to a few other peers, to my ex-colleagues, on how to plan their finances better. And like a lot of them, they take those risks. For example, starting up is a risk that people take, and like they asked me, what should I do? How should I plan such that I am able to start up? And because it's such a huge risk, right? When you're starting up, and I saw this same example with another peer of mine who started up, and like they had a lifestyle to keep up to.
Oh.
And they would find it a struggle to be able to afford that lifestyle just because they had started up. And in fact, there was another senior of mine from IIT Kharagpur who wanted to start a venture fund of his own, but could not take that risk just because he was not able to convince his family to adjust their lifestyle.
Wow.
And so like these are very, very crucial decisions that people have to take if they are looking to start up. And like that experience helped me understand these things better, right? And like starting up is just one example, but let's say if you want to buy a house, for example, right? What do you need to be able to plan for that. If you want to, let's say, you want to study abroad, what do you need to plan for that? All of these things are actually financial costs, and it requires a little bit of planning, some bit of mathematical jugglery, and it's super important that this tool be available and accessible to most people. And I think that was my experience with Cashvisory. I think one thing that I find very, very very fascinating, and I actually enjoyed using the tool, because it helped me. It took a bunch of inputs of what my current financials are, about how much I was making, and then how much I have saved, and from there it was able to spit out what are the things that I need to do. For example, like the simple thing that it pointed out, that I don't have a term insurance.
Yeah, I was coming to that. Actually, you bought your insurance after.
I bought my term insurance after that, and something as simple as that, people are not aware of.
Yeah, and they don't understand the importance of isolating their risk from the growth. That how they need to manage their risk first before they actually put money in the growth.
Yeah, and like that was again like a super crucial insight that I got. Because one of the primary reason I kept my money in the bank account for about 5 years, all the money that I had in the bank account for 5 years, because I could not take that risk.
Yeah.
But then the answer to that was very simple. It was again a mathematical concept, a financial concept, rather, I would say, that I need to have an emergency fund. As long as I have that emergency fund, I can take the risk.
You're good to go. Yeah,
you're good to go, and that's it.
Yeah,
and that emergency fund could be as much as 6 months. It doesn't have to be your
entire life's earnings. Yeah, exactly, right. I think what people don't realize when they look at things like insurance also, which covers their risk, is sometimes they feel that if I'm going to pay this much for insurance, I can just accumulate that amount. It's not just the amount that you compare. You also have to compare the impact it has on your peace of mind, because that's the peace of mind that actually enables you to go out and invest and take the highest risk possible in the market, right? So I think the skills right there is something that you need to build in yourself, which can be built, which I've seen a lot of people. I've seen you're not invested, in fact made some not great choices, and then getting back on track, starting your investments, getting your insurance. So I think it's never too late for people listening to us. Please get started.